So my battery's low, so I'm gonna have to try to make this short. In this video, I'm gonna explain why people of 60 and older continue to screw up other younger people's lives with their rhetoric, like giving them bad advice. I'm giving you an example of my coworker, and that's the one that came to mind. But I've seen this over and over and over. And it must be nice to come from a generation like these older gentlemen where these things are options. Like, my coworker had a storage unit and she's living for over 2 years, working two jobs, and she's homeless. And she's living out of cars, she's living out of apartments. She's complaining that the person that she paid $1,000 to stay there to the month to, she gives him $250 to $300 a week, plus she gives him more money to rent his vehicle, that he now wants sex, and she's not coming back there. But now she has no place to stay. And this old guy, about 70 years, goes, "I thought you had a storage unit." And she goes, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "Just stay in there. What the fuck is wrong with your generation? You just stay in the storage unit. You just make a fire and camp out. What's so hard about that?" But see, I don't think this older generation realizes they fucked that shit up for us. If you try to camp out and keep warm during winter with the fire, you're now an arsonist and you go to jail and you have a record that follows you for the rest of your life because you made a fire. Plus, there's not many areas, like public areas, are no longer public to the public. Yeah, a public area, like a public park, is no longer allowed to be used by homeless public. If you don't have a home, those parks aren't for you. If you try to camp out there for the night, you will be arrested. Yes, if you use a public park to sleep at the night, you will be arrested. There's a couple towns like New York City or Boston that allow you to sleep on benches, but that comes and goes every so often. But 99.99% of the towns in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Florida, anywhere you go around the country, it is illegal to trespass. And they consider trespassing being in front of a store, being on a bench downtown, or also being in a public park for any more than an hour or two. You spend more than an hour on a park bench, you start drawing attention. When you are there for 4 more hours, the police start arriving. If you don't keep it moving, you're arrested. Stuff like that continues to happen in society. And how about the storage unit? This old fella told my coworker, "Why doesn't she just stay in a storage unit? She has one, just sleep in that thing." Because they have cameras today, and they called the police on you, and the police arrive at the storage unit. They open it up with permission of the owners, and you're sitting right there with nowhere to go. I have seen this happen to at least 20 homeless people where they try to stay in a storage unit because some old fart in their 70s says, "Oh, yeah, you're allowed to do that." No, you were allowed to do that in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, and 40s. If you owned a storage unit in the 50s, most of the time you could get away with sleeping in it for a week or so or for a night here or there to stay from freezing to death, and making a fire to stay warm and staying alive, like you've seen in New York City over the trash fires, or you saw people camping out by the river. They used to call them hobos. They used to ride the tracks, and you would see them camping out by a fire, by the railroad tracks, or by the river, or in the woods someplace. You used to see hobos doing that. That was so they could stay alive. Nowadays, hobos are meant to die. You're allowed to stay. You can do that. They're not going to arrest you necessarily. They might if you're out there, though, if you're just camping out. Most of the time, they'll just bulldoze all your belongings. They'll take your tent away. The police will come in and steal all your belongings and leave you there with nothing. That's most of the time what the police will do. But if you have a campfire to stay warm, I have seen several people be put in the prison just because they had a campfire. That's why I avoid it. I've never had well, there's one time I had a campfire because we had this little gulch, so this gulf or this indent, so the fire was unseen and we were fenced off, so not even a police officer could get to us unless they hopped the fence. So there was one time I did make a fire to stay warm when I was living for the 4 years outside. But I knew anywhere but this one spot. If I went into the woods under the bridge and I made a campfire to stay warm because it was winter and it's 0 degrees, I will be arrested for arson, and I will have a record for the rest of my life that people don't understand. I just tried to stay warm. That's it. I did what all my ancestors did. Are you telling me all my ancestors were criminals too? Every single ancestor that made a fire to stay warm, the cowboys, all the Indians, the Italians, the Greeks, the Scots, any of them, they all made fires to stay warm. Are you telling me that if I try to make a nice rock fireplace, I make a stone fireplace, and I try to stay warm for a night, that is arson? And if it is, how about all those hobos? How about all the people in the 1800s? How about the cowboys going across country? How about all these people? If you, I mean, if there's 60% of America living check to check, we got 20% of America homeless now. Now, it's actually a lot higher number too, because a lot of them are dying or they don't register. So we got a larger number that just isn't registering of homeless as well. So we got a large population that has no access to a heater indoors. I mean, you might not think of it as a big deal. You come into a building, the heat's already on, you already got four walls blocking the wind. You never think about what would happen if you don't have those four walls and you have to use shelters and the shelters won't allow you in, or you're one of these people that are discriminated against because you have a disability that the doctors don't want to document, or if you are an immigrant from another country illegally. I don't support that, but you freeze to death then. Well, for Americans who are in this country, there's no reason why, born in America, Americans should be dying every year of exposure. But if you go in to any local town and you try to actually do your research, you will find deaths of exposure in Lowell, Boston, Worcester, Rochester, in every town in America that you see in the north. You got deaths of exposure. Are you telling me in today's world, 2024, we don't have a treatment for exposure? Are you telling me we are so in the dark ages that we can't even treat exposure so people are forced to die from it? I mean, it takes at least 12 hours to really, really kill somebody with exposure. I mean, they might lose their fingers and toes and they might look like Frankenstein after only 3 hours of exposure and then going back out and then 3 hours of exposure and then back out, what I call the revolving door. But you're telling me that there is no cure for exposure in 2024, that we're still looking for a cure for it in America? Is that how fucking selfish we are? That we're trying to pretend like we need a cure for this disease called exposure? No, it's let the fucking man make a fire and keep warm. That's it. But no, that's illegal today. But see, you see a lot of old farts who have their money today that go, oh, I used to ride the railroad tracks. And when I was your age, when I was 20, I rode the railroad tracks and I made my start up here. I was born in Dakotas and I rode the railroad tracks and I ended up in New England and I got my first job and that's how I got my start. Well, how did you stay warm your first winter? What do you mean? We had a campfire. I mean, that's not rocket scientist. You just make a campfire. What the fuck's wrong with you kids? And then when you realize that today, if you make a campfire, you're arrested and they hunt you down like crazy nowadays. It's not like it used to be where they would just try to leave you alone and they didn't want you to be seen. You know, you stayed out of sight from the public. Nobody saw you. You just had your campfire. You stayed warm. You had a couple hobos hanging around the river in the woods, hanging around the train tracks on the side of the woods, in the woods, 10 feet from the train track, whatever. But the hobos today that try to do that, they're forced to go into prison on a revolving door. And if they just dare to make a fire, that's arson. They're looking at years and years and years in a record. And a lot of them do. A lot of them do try to make a fire to stay warm when fall and winter comes in. And if you ask any of them, the police have arrested them after a while. If you're older folk, they give you a little break because they remember, oh, back in their time, you were allowed to stay warm and not die. But today they want you to die. If it's between death of exposure or staying someplace warm for the night, They don't want you going in hallways. They don't want you in ATMs. They don't. The shelter told you no, you're not allowed to stay. You've tried every hospital. So, and you tried to go into the woods to make a fire to stay warm. They told you no. So, what do they want you to do when you ask the police officer, when you ask the hospital, when you ask the shelter? What do you want me to do to stay alive here? I need warmth. It's 0 degrees, and you told me I'm not allowed to stay at the shelter. This is and well until they opened up the wet shelter. So when I first arrived to Lowell, during winter and during summer and fall, they only had what they called a dry shelter. You had to be sober. But also, you had to have paperwork on your disabilities. To get into a dry shelter, not only do you got to be sober, you can't have any disabilities not properly documented that cause you to not be able to walk or you fall in the shower. Or if you're going to have problems that are medical eventually, they need to know that, they have documentation of these, or they think you're playing a game, or they might throw you out asking you to stop and just move your legs already, or, oh, when I tell you to move your legs, you better move your legs. We don't see anything on your file that says you can't move your legs. So stop playing games and just move your fucking legs already. So stuff like that. Now, the funny part about me is I just do it anyways, and then I fall outside. I don't like refusing to do stuff. So if my legs aren't working, I just fall. I just get up and I fall, and then they call an ambulance. Because if I try to sit there, they're gonna treat me like shit. So when I was having problems with my disabilities and they were discriminating against me, I just injured myself and put my life in the danger doing what these idiots want me to do. I'll stand up, take a couple steps, fall, and break my head against the table, start bleeding on the ground, but I'm not unconscious. So then I'm just trying to crawl for the door. Then they're saying, stay there, call an ambulance. And then they're like, what the fuck just happened? I told you I can't walk right now. Something's wrong with me. I'm not making it up. It's not a game. It's not like I do this. It only happens during winter and when my legs, and I'm happy to go out and eat. What are you waking me up for? I'm already awake. I'm already fully dressed. I'm already here. And all I'm doing is going next door to get a food and sit down for a couple hours. It's not like it's a big deal, but the problem is my legs won't work. It's not like I'm having to leave to go outside yet. You wake me up early in the morning. I got to go to get breakfast. We moved to the other place. But see, that's a problem that would get in the way. That's why I'm not allowed to stay in a shelter. Because back then, they didn't have a bunch of junkies to throw me with. That's usually what they do. As soon as they see my disability and it's not documented, they just throw me over to the junkies now. Oh, well, we'll just give them to the junkies. So then they just they take a sober man who has years of sober urines, who has no drug problem whatsoever. He has, well, let's say he has 8 years of sobriety without even drinking a beer. We're talking about no weed, no beer. Let's talk about nothing. We got nothing. And they will take this man and they will throw him with all the junkies who fail drug tests. Why? Because they don't know what to do with a man who can't get medical care. I mean, they never heard of such a thing. A man who has fake medical records and it's all unable to explain what they're seeing right in front of them. I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. Why does he walk funny? Why does he talk funny? Why is he unconscious bleeding on my floor? Why is he unable to move his arms to hit a button? Why does he keep on missing buttons? Why can't he dial a phone after he has these falls? Why does his legs move funny? Why is he bumping in the furniture? Why does he have such speech impediments? And why does his voice go from girly, kitty, to back to normal to like a kid when he's 100% sober? And we know he's sober because we got urines, hair, everything. We got the works. He's going to the hospital to get blood examined all the time. We know he's sober completely. But why is his voice changing then? Well, what the fuck is going on with this guy? That's what everybody has been wanting to know for the last 25 years. But see, this is the other problem. Instead of asking me and giving the real answer, that I have a neurological disorder that affects my nervous system. I have ADHD, as well as I got PTSD and anxiety. And my mother is the one. I was born with ADHD, but my mother destroyed my central nervous system on purpose. She slipped me drugs I wasn't prescribed to fuck up my body. There's probably 100 things I don't know what to call wrong with me as well that doctors will have to diagnose from my mother slipping me so many drugs. But we do know she destroyed my nervous system, caused a neurological disorder that also causes seizures, and that's why I have problems moving my legs and arms. And according to the teachers and doctors of the time, they put me in speech therapy and they put me in physical therapy because there was a sudden change right when this happened. Now, I've watched these symptoms slowly get worse in the same part. You can feel it. It's part of you. I mean, I can feel the part that shakes in my arm. I mean, when my arm is shaking, you better believe I can feel that that goes back all the way to the overdose. You can feel it. You can feel the parts that were ruined. I mean, if somebody runs over your foot, you don't wonder, was it my left foot or my right? No, you know, even 20 years later, it was your right foot because your right foot still hurts. You can still feel the parts that were run over when you were 7. So it doesn't matter if somebody drugs you internally, if it's a lot, if it's an overdose level where you go blind and you feel a sudden change in your body overnight, and then the teachers are calling you into the hallway asking about the sudden change that happened to you overnight, and then your mother is trying to avoid responsibility, and your father's playing with himself in the corner, just jacking off, wondering, oh no, we'll let my wife handle it. Yeah, we're not going to listen to anybody. Yeah, well, fuck whatever's happening over there. I'm going to sit here. And, he could have a kid literally who just lost his vision. His breathing is slowing down and he's going on unconscious on a pile of newspapers at his feet. And he's not able to even watch the movie he was so excited to watch. The kid was so excited to watch Batman Mr. Freeze. And then the drugs kicked in that the mother gave him. And now he's passed out. He's drugged silly. It looks like he might die. But my father doesn't care. He's like, oh, he's taking a nap. Let him sleep it off. Yeah. Whatever pills you gave him, we'll just let him sleep it off. Yeah. And my mother's on the phone with emergency responders, and they're telling her, oh, bring him to the emergency room. And then she hangs up on them. And then we have conversation after conversation as I ask questions of the doctors. Something was wrong that night. I really want to know what happened. Something was wrong. Please, let's talk about this. What? But no matter how much I bring it up at the doctor, my mother goes, it was an allergy attack. We don't need to talk about that. I don't remember the meds. We need a new doctor. Now we're moving to Texas. I don't remember. We're not talking about that. It was just an allergy attack. I don't remember. Let's not talk about that. Oh, Zach, they just told me to bring you to the emergency room. That's all they said on the phone. Well, why didn't you? Because they don't know what they're talking about. Well, I remember you saying that. That's the only thing you said to Dad before I passed out. Yeah. They told me to bring you to the emergency room. That's stupid. Nobody brings a child to the emergency room for an overdose. I mean allergy attack. I mean, that's how my mother was. She would just say the most loony, fucked up things in front of my father, and then my father would just like not hear it somehow. And then when it affected me, then I'm loony. And my mother was beating me in another room to send a message to my 50-year-old older brother and in front of her grandson. So it drags her adopted son into a room for no reason, just literally no reason. The mother can't even come up with a reason. She's just literally mad and pissed off, and she wants to send a message to Tim. And at the time, we know that she's pissed off at Tim, something that happened. So she grabs Zach, drags him over to a room, takes up a metal or a thick plastic ruler, takes the sharp edge and starts smacking Zach. But she does this in front of her grandson, Seth, so he has to watch or know what's going on. Then the message is sent up the chain. Now, when this affects Zach, and Zach is next day has problems at school, when Zach is complaining that he didn't like getting a ruler beating, then what happens? Then I'm called crazy for not liking the ruler beating. My mother goes, it's an all made up story because it's attachment disorder. Yeah, he made it up because he has attachment disorder. He's just out to get me, my mother says. Then my father nods his head in agreement. Yeah, she would never do such a thing. Yeah. So then we got all the people that are supposed to help me process this, the people that are supposed to help me emotionally move on from my mother smacking me around with a ruler for no reason. Now, I was able to move on my own. I'm worried about the future. I'm worried about how do I go to the doctors tomorrow. That's what bothers me today. It's how the fuck am I going to get better? That's it. I'm 32 years old, and I've been malpracticed so much, and I've been hurt so much by doctors and my mother and father that I have nothing left. There's nothing left in my body. They've just teared chunks out of me. They just wanted me, every bit of my body, every bit of me, they've torn away. If I wanted to go to work today, too bad. My family already tore that away. For me to go back to work, I now got to get documentation of my disabilities. So I have a job, I'm just not allowed to go back to it. Well, I have an apartment to stay warm. Oh, that's right, my family's tearing that away. To keep in this apartment, I also need my income, Social Security or my work. Well, we already know about work. How about Social Security? Oh, that's right, Social Security only has fake, fraudulent medical records that are all nuts. So we got to clear those out and make up a new one that's based in reality. We need to make up a new Social Security file, pull it out, make it out, pull up the pages, write it up, and then we got to actually pull it from real information that really has to do with the disability the doctors are seeing. That's speech, walking, and that's me getting very upset and angry when there's about to be a misunderstanding. That's another one. Why do I get anxiety attacks when somebody is just misunderstanding or when somebody's making up a story about me? Why does that bother me more than a murderer I'm standing up to? I mean, you have two guys beating on a man until he has his head caved in, his back broken, his arms broken, and I'm putting on my shoes to go talk to these two murderers, and I'm able to suck up my anxiety for that. But go to the doctors, oh my God, when I go to the doctors, I know they're going to hurt me way more than those two murderers. Those two murderers might cave in my head. But my mother and father, they're going to have doctors injecting me with drugs that cause cancer. They're going to have drugs that they don't even know. The doctors aren't even going to be let know. Like my mother's going to slip me pills, give me Epicac punishments, just do a bunch of crazy ass fucking shit to my body. And then she's not even going to tell the doctors about the shit she's doing. Instead, she's going to make up stories about mental illnesses so the doctors add drugs on top of that. So, oh boy, is that scary, being drugged repeatedly, being grabbed by the shoulders, thrown to the ground, and given two drugs in the same hour that the doctors aren't even aware you were double drugged. Instead, the doctors are told you only got one dose and you cheeked to spit it out. But where did I spit it out? Nowhere, apparently. There's nothing. All we have for proof is my roommate wanted to get back at me, so he went out and told the nurse I didn't take my meds. That's it. That's all that was there. And so they're holding me down, giving me 3 of the same drugs, plus an extra Thorazine on top of it, and an extra Benadryl. They always give those 2 extra. Here, extra Haldol and extra Thorazine. Yes, and if you're lucky, you'll get an extra Xanax on top of it, too. All because they have to force you on the ground if you say no. I said, no, I'm not going to take the same medication twice in the hour. That's all I told them. I said, I already took my meds. I'm already feeling them kick in. It's only been 30 minutes. You don't need to give me a second dose just because my roommate told the story. And then they say, too bad, we're giving it to you anyways. Then the nurse went away, grabbed some big guys, and held me to the ground. And this was the nurse that used to smile when she was causing pain with children. I watched her with other children. She used to smile and get a kick out of watching children on the ground screaming in pain, getting traumatic stuff. And she was a cause of a lot of it. Like, this did not need to happen. You only had a 10-year-old who wanted to get back at his roommate by telling a story to staff. That's all that was. That happens all the time in programs. The kids will try to get back at other kids by telling a story to staff. But see, when the kids do this with doctors, the doctors are like, yes, let's go drug him. Yes, we just got a report from a 10-year-old that says that the other 10-year-old isn't taking his meds. Let's go and give him a double dose. And that's traumatic to children. And this is the system that we have created. We have created a system where we will double dose children who are 10 years old on nothing more than a word of another 10-year-old. And then they say, oh, no, we had proof. We had the nurse. She said that she saw it. What? No. No, all you saw is the kids walk up to the counter, take their meds, and then go back to their room. And then 30 minutes later, Joey came up to the counter and said Zach didn't take his meds. Then you sent the horrible one, the really evil looking one, over. She asked me if I took my meds. I said yes. She said, okay, well, how about you take them again? I said, that's dangerous. I'll talk to the doctor about taking 2 doses in the same hour, but I don't think the doctor wants me to double dose myself. And I was having a conversation just fine with her that I'm not taking another dose of meds. I just did. It's only been 30 minutes, and that's just Joey. Then she goes, well, why is Joey telling me you didn't? I said, he's just trying to get back at me. That's it. Then she goes, well, we're giving it to you anyways. Then she walks over to the counter, gets some big bulky man to hold me down, starts grabbing me, holds me down. Then they give me my regular medicine. And then on top of that, they inject me with something. Oh, now we're going to keep you calm. We're going to give you Thorazine. We're going to give you Haldol. We're going to give you Benadryl. We're going to give you all this stuff. And we're only going to tell you the names of the stuff afterwards, after you're a drooling mess, shitting your pants. Because we're now giving you 2 doses of your same medication. And on top of that, we've given you some stuff to calm you down. So that way you're not a problem. It's still to this day, I want to rip out throats and beat them. I still want to go into Lowell Treatment Center, find that woman who did this, and rip out her fucking heart. Just stick my hand right into her chest and rip it out. And then I want to go over to my mother and smack her in the face only about 100 times back and forth. And she can turn the other cheek and see how she likes to be tied up and smacked. And my mother died with liver failure because nobody would give her treatment for this crazy ass shit. Now I'm gonna die. These people need to be brought to light. People need to know that this is bad or they continue with more children. I guarantee you, that fucking cunt, that nurse who's hurting children when I was there probably hurt hundreds more children after I left. And my mother, who lied to doctors, she's still hurting me today. She's dead because she didn't get the help she needed. I tried to keep her alive through my father. I told my father, stop letting her drink. Stop letting her take pills out of the closet. Please stop her. She's taking my pills. Please stop letting her take so much pills and alcohol. Please stop letting her act crazy. Please stop giving her a license to kill. Please. And every time for 15 years, my father would just let her continue. Even when my mother was going through liver failure, only 20% of her liver worked. She's coming home to visit her family. And instead, she blows past her family, who's ready to give her a hug, goes straight for the liquor cabinet, and starts drinking. She has liver failure, and she's waiting for a liver transplant. Is that somebody who really should be qualified for a liver transplant? Somebody who's drinking while their liver is failing? Somebody who has every intention to drink alcohol if they get a new liver? How about the 10-year-old who needs it? That list is a big list. So a 10-year-old should die while waiting instead of what? I mean, this is just such a fucked up situation. Mom, we want you to get a liver. I want you to have a liver. That means you cannot drink while your liver is failing, because then the hospital might know there's alcohol in your system. And if they know that, they might do something like pull the breathing when they have you in the ambulance, because they don't want you taking a little kid's liver. I knew this much from TV. I knew from watching TV that people who drink are not supposed to get liver transplants ahead of a 10-year-old child. We all knew that. Now my mother needs a liver transplant. 20% of her liver's working, that's it. She's been in the hospital for months dying. She came home to see the family, at least that's what she told the doctors, so they would allow her home. And instead of seeing the family, instead of begging to get the family together, instead of having me by her side through this, she wanted the alcohol by her side. And my father's in the kitchen cowering from this confrontation. All he has to do is stop her right when she starts. Right when she starts going for the liquor cabinet, all my father had to do was close the door right on her hand and say, sit back down, you're here for the family. That's it. And then I have to go over to the kitchen and tell my father what level he needs to be at. You break all the bottles in the sink. If I do it, then you guys flip out at me and you guys call me crazy. And then for the rest of my life, I'm the homicidal maniac who breaks booze bottles because he wants to drink it all or something. That's what my mother and father would have put on my medical record if I broke all those bottles. That's how they are. I walk over there, I start taking the booze, I start breaking it in the sink. My father takes his gin bottle, pulls it out of there, hides it over near a different spot. I'm breaking all the bottles. My father's yelling at me, "How dare you? I want the money back. I want you to replace all those. How dare you do this while my wife comes back from the hospital? How dare you? You're the most evil son ever. How dare you make a scene and make this all about you? How dare you break those booze bottles just because Patricia has a martini on the couch? How dare you?" And they would be yelling at me in my face as my mother dies and goes through liver failure, and they're drinking booze while they're on the liver transplant list, and I'm having to break bottles. But see, I couldn't do that. They wouldn't allow it. That's the thing. My father probably come over and start beating me, punching me, smacking me. He's done it before just for a USB. My mother smacked me over nothing but leaving a message to her grandson. So I take their liquor away. Oh, you better believe that's going to be a smacking or two. So I'm not allowed to. So instead, I go to my father. I tell him that bullshit about it's not my place at the age of 20 to tell you guys what to do, but you need to stop her from drinking. And then he goes and whispers something in her ear, like that's going to stop an alcoholic. Like, please stop drinking, alcoholic. Please, that works, right? When you have a guy on heroin or you have an alcoholic and they're going through liver failure, you just ask them politely and they stop, right? That's usually what happens. They don't go upstairs and try to make it to their closet to get a Vicodin instead. They don't do that, right? They don't go and finish their drink anyways, right? That doesn't happen with that. Of course it does. Anybody who knows an alcoholic knows you can't just ask them to stop. You got to take the alcohol out of the room. You take the alcohol away. That's it. Sorry, wifey, you're going through liver failure. We're taking the booze away. We want you to live with us a long life. And that's what I wanted. I wanted my mother to live many, 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 many more years. Because there was something going on that she was doing. And death doesn't help. I mean, you better believe I wanted to give her a smack. Still today, I wish she was alive just so I could give her a smack across the face and handle this with her. Oh, absolutely. I want her alive, healthy, kicking, and all that. But my father, he just fed into her behavior. He fed into it, and he still today blames me for anything that goes wrong in their lives. And whenever I try to tell them that they did something wrong and there's a mess needing cleaned up, how dare you blame me for stuff? I'm running away from you. How dare you, Zach? You handle it on your own. Yes, it's all you. It's all you. It's all your fault. Yes. And then my father will tell me I'm lazy. It's all my fault because I'm lazy. It's all my fault because I don't do anything right. It's all my fault because I'm stupid. That's one of my favorites. I'm stupid. I have a learning disability. I'm immature. These are one of his favorites. And what does that have to do with the doctors having misinformation? Nothing. It's just what he pulls up whenever he doesn't want to do something. Whenever my father wants to run away from a subject, oh, you're blaming me? Well, you're just lazy. Oh, yeah? Well, you're just immature. Yeah, that's what you are, Zach. You're immature. He throws that, and because of my funny voice and my funny walk and my disabilities, my father knows that will work on any newcomer. And because I've been moved around my whole life every 2 years, the longest I've ever spent in one spot in my entire life is right here in Rochester, New Hampshire. I'm on 7 years. 7 years in the same town of Rochester, New Hampshire. This is the longest I think I've ever spent since the age of 7 years old, 6 years old. I spent 2 years in Westford. I spent 2 years in El Paso, Texas. About 2 years, less than 18 months in New Mexico. I spent 6 months and then 3 months and then 3 months and then 2 months and then 3 months and then 1 month and then 2 months and one in Algonquin, Maine. Then I spent about 2 years, maybe three, at Chelmsford. But then I spent another 3 or 4 years in Haverhill. Then I spent another maybe 2 years in Lawrence, and then a lot more. And then I spent about 1 year in Lowell, 1 year in Lawrence, 1 year in Haverhill, and then 1 year back, well, 3 months back to Lawrence and another year in Lowell. Then I spent another year in Lowell, and all this. Whenever I was going through this, I was living in the woods. I didn't have any housing. And like, if you like talking about the shelter in Lawrence, that they only give you 30 days in, 60 days out. So you have that, you get 30 days that start the minute you go in there, and then after 30 days you cannot come back for 60. So you have to live outside for 60 days or find some housing. Then you can go back in. They just don't have enough spots at 119 Winter Street. I would bet they still do it too. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, so you have a lot of these programs where you're just living outdoors in Lawrence, living outdoors in Haverhill, living outdoors. And in Haverhill, actually, it wasn't a year. Sorry. In Haverhill, it was only a couple months. It was only actually about 1 month, less than a month. Wow. Yeah, I only was there for less than a month, so I guess you can't count Haverhill, except for I came back a lot of times to stay with people in Haverhill, so it was a bouncing off spot where I have spent months and months, at least 12 months in Haverhill split up. But I've also spent a shitload of years by that same logic in Ogunquit, so really we're not going there. But anyways, so then at that point, I'm back in Lowell, and I'm now 2 years straight in Lowell, but I leave to go into a Taunton TSS program. I want to get into a halfway house, and I'm now at this point, I'm drinking way too much. I'm drinking so I won't have a seizure, so I won't have epileptic seizures, so the cold doesn't kill me. And it's not like everybody else says that. A lot of homeless people go, oh, well, it keeps you warm. No, it doesn't. It drops your blood. Alcohol will make you freeze more. But I need to be able to move my legs. If I can't move my legs to get out of the woods, that is my problem. Alcohol does not keep me warm like these other alcoholics. Don't mix me up with these other alcoholics that go, alcohol keeps me warm. That's a misconception. That's stupid bullshit. Alcohol drops your blood temperature. You will freeze quicker with alcohol. But if you have epilepsy and you're trying to keep seizures from coming so you don't end up in the woods frozen to death and you got to keep your body moving, that actually is helpful because I get cramps and my legs stop working in cold. But if I use benzos like Ativan or alcohol like Ativan, my legs will keep moving so I can keep moving. And thus, I can keep the epilepsy from causing a seizure. I can get out of the woods in the morning as well as I keep warm because I'm moving all the time. That is how alcohol kept me from freezing to death. Very different than anybody else saying that alcohol is keeping them warm. It's not. Alcohol does not keep me warm. Alcohol keeps me from having seizures and keeps my legs moving. That's what it does. And thus, it keeps me warm because if you get stuck with your legs not working, think for a minute. Let's say you're one of these old assholes who are making up fantasies like my mother or my father, where they take one little thing of detail like alcohol doesn't keep you warm. I never said it does. I said it treats my epilepsy, and that's it. But I said I had to use it on really cold nights, and this is why. If I have to go into the woods, picture for yourself, let's say you're 80 years old and you're one of these guys who had it easy. Back in your time, you wouldn't go to jail for just staying warm. Yeah. Back in your time, you guys had it easy. I understand it. You don't go to jail. Everything wasn't hooked up to a computer. No, there wasn't prisons full, and innocent people didn't go to jail. But guess what? Now we got politicians being bribed left and right. We got innocent people going to jail. And guess what? Minimum wage no longer pays for a one bedroom. Yes, back in your time, if you worked 40 hours, that paid your bills. Now that's 80 hours. A lot of people have to work two jobs, about 80 hours, just to support their one bedroom lifestyle in their car and just keep moving forward and go to college. They have to work more than 80 hours to do what 40 hours got you in the 50s and 60s. So, yeah, I know. It was easy for you guys, and you guys all want us to have what you had. But guess what? It doesn't work that way. You eroded the system, you sucked it dry. Your grandparents in the 30s, over 300,000 people gave their lives. I mean, so many people worked so hard to give us the 40-hour work week. And that came in about the 40s and 50s. Then by the 50s, the people that were benefiting from the 40-hour work week, the people that benefited, they forgot all about how they had to keep this going, how hard of a battle it was for the bottom just to have something like a 40-hour work week. Instead, they slowly eroded it right before our eyes. And my father of 89, he has no problem with that. No problem. If you look at the numbers of an ice cream driver in 1950 and an ice cream driver today, and then you adjust it for a loaf of bread and rent, and you try to just adjust for inflation what it costs, you'll quickly notice that the ice cream driver from 1950 was making double to triple. Some of these jobs, like gas station attendants, you can count it 4 times the spending power. A guy working as a gas station attendant or running a gas station by himself, just managing a gas station by himself for 10 to 12 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week in 1950, that guy would have enough money to pay for his mortgage. Everything would be golden. But today, they're getting paid less than what it cost for the shittiest one bedroom in a town that's rotting away. And even then, a lot of times you still can't make electric. It is pathetic that 40 hours today won't even buy you the basic necessities. But see, this is the problem of today. We don't get what the people in 1950, they're always doing it too. The people in power, that's the problem with a lot of these old bucks. They're thinking the world was like when they were in the world. People just aren't working hard enough. No, I know people working 2 jobs and they're only 26, 30 years old. They're working 80 hours and they're having to live with their mother or out in a car. Like Jess, she doesn't live with any family members. She lives in cars and people wanting to have sex with her. Strangers' houses. Why? Is it because she's not working hard enough? She's working over 80 hours at times. She works anywhere from, let me see, 26 and 26 is 52 to 80. She works anywhere from 52 to 80 hours every single week. That is a ridiculous. And she's stressed out. She's burnt out. You can see how this affects her. And why does she do it? Because she's forced to by a system that's designed. The 40-hour work week has been eroded, so has minimum wage. They're destroyed. Our health care has been destroyed. And then the people on Social Security talk about how these social programs mean we're going to be communist. I'm not kidding. We have the people on a social program like Social Security are the same people saying, no social programs will become communist. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen in my life. You're on a social program. It's called Social Security. When you spend your money, remember, you pay in the Social Security, but you don't always have the same amount of money back. Most people outlive the amount of money they put in. And that's why the taxpayers kick in money after that. That's what happens. You put money in the Social Security retirement. But if you spend or if you outlive your money, there still will be social programs from the taxpayers to keep you going. That is how it works. That is how David Ganji, my roommate who I take care of, has been alive all this time. He didn't pay in a ridiculous amount of money to Social Security, but yet the taxpayers are keeping him alive. Same thing with my father or any other elderly person. They all live on a program that's only 100 years old. It was actually less than that. It was started in the 40s. So actually it was 50s. It was right 40s, 50s. Anyways, Social Security is not that old. We're talking 80 years at max. We're talking not that old of a program. And it's a social program. When Social Security was first proposed for disabled people and the elderly, people looked at it as a communist party type idea, giving taxpayer dollars, having everybody pay into a program that only the elderly. How about if I die? How about if some doctor malpractices me, makes me sick, and I don't get to live to see 83 years old? What happens then? What happens to my money when I die at the age of 40? Who gets it? And what happens if, let's say, my mother can't collect her Social Security? What happens then? Do I get stiffed out of it? I mean, my mother paid taxes I'm not going to get my Social Security. My mother, I not got nothing out of her Social Security. She never got the collect. So what? I'm just drained completely and I have to pay into a system like that. Plus, I never received a dime in Social Security in my life. Yet Social Security tells me that they've already seen my name being used. Oh, yeah, that's right. My father claimed I was disabled for a bunch of mental disorders while ignoring my physical disabilities because they were attached to something my mother did to me. So whenever I mentioned how I was having problems with my coordination, I was having problems moving my legs, you saw me bumping the furniture, I was just a mess, I'm losing weight, something's definitely wrong with me physically. And the doctors were trying to tell my mother to do stuff. They were trying real hard with physical therapy, speech therapy. But then my mother would come up with this bullshit like moving me to Texas and then saying, he's cured, he's cured. I gave him ballet, so he's cured. He doesn't have any more problems with his coordination. Meanwhile, my shins are all bloody and I'm all having seizures in the woods of New Mexico and my family's only seeing me 1 hour a month. My mother and father only saw me 1 hour a month. Then they would just say, oh, well, I made phone calls to the staff members. Uh, yeah. These staff members are choking out a little girl of 7 years old in the shower because she only stayed 5 minutes too long in the shower. How fucked up is that shit? How fucked up is the heads of an African American named Toby where he thinks it's okay to choke a naked 7-year-old girl, white, in the shower all because she took 5 minutes too long. Over the neck, took her own arms, took this little girl's own arms, crossed them around the neck, and then pulled it until the upper arms were around the windpipe. And he would do this to all the kids that were under 10 years old that were skinny and white, including me. So I know. How fucked up are these people, Toby, my mother, my father, and then they call me crazy for not liking it. Just because I don't like it, or they'll take stuff out of context, or they'll try to say I'm making these things up. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. This is just how people are. They're fucking nuts. They're crazy. Just like how Rick and Tammy. Rick threw Tammy over a fucking cliff because he was beating on his wife. Sorry, I got that wrong. David threw Rick over a fucking cliff because he was hitting Tammy, his wife. That's fucking nuts. It's nuts that we had to listen to Rick beating on his wife for years. And no matter if police officers stepped in, it doesn't matter if we try to step in, Tammy, the one getting the beating, was the one who was getting mad. Because she had, oh my God, I know this one like the back of my head. This is from the head injuries. It makes it so hard. Something syndrome, but I have this one down. Anyways, it'll come to me some other time. I know that one, but I've received several head injuries thanks to my father not allowing me to get medical care and his continuous storytelling about my name. He continues to drag my name to the mud through the last 25 years. If you ask my father to describe anything about my life or anything that he did or his wife did to me that still affects my life today, he'll go straight into blaming me for something. He's stupid. He's mentally ill. It's immature. It's a story. He's a liar. Oh, I don't remember. It never happened. Oh, my wife would never do that. Whatever fucking gets it makes him feel like it doesn't have to happen. Meanwhile, the machine they created to malpractice me, cut doctors off, is still created today. The doctors still have no idea that it was all a big game that my mother and father played with them. But then again, remember, I've never been in one town for very long. The doctors in Rochester around here are finally starting to realize it's real because I've been here for 6 years. When I first moved up here, they thought it was real because they could see it. But then they read my medical files after they started talking to my father and they started to do malpractice and hurt me. And now I got more injuries than ever. Then they realized they were just injuring me and what my father was doing is getting me hurt. And what his wife was doing was getting me hurt. And my mother really is dead because that other woman that they talked to on the phone is a stepmother, my father's new wife. And they don't know what the fuck is going on now. So now doctors don't know up from down, the side, they're all confused. But now they realize I'm telling the truth and it's real. but they just don't know what to do about it because they now have malpracticed me so much. So now they just want to cut off care. So now a lot of the doctors are like, I'm scared to touch this kid. So now we're just stuck again. So now I got to move to another town, invest another 6 years, and it's going to do the same process. When you first meet me, you know it's real. Then you'll read my medical files, you'll talk to my father and whoever else, and they'll spin you fantasies. Oh, he's mentally ill. Oh, it's all a story he's making up. And then you'll question yourself. And you'll wonder, is it made up? Is it real? Is it made up? Is it real? Is it made up? Is it real? And while you do that, I'll continue getting injured because no doctors will do anything for me. Then they'll realize, oh no, it's real, after they've already malpracticed me a bunch because they've gone by my medical files that are fraudulent. I'll tell the doctors, if you use my medical history or any information that came from my mother or father or me while I was brainwashed, I will get injured, hurt, bleed, maybe even die from the care you give me. So do not do that. But a lot of times that's exactly what they do anyways, because that's what it says on my medical file. And who wrote that? Who convinced these doctors of these stories? My mother and father for 15 years straight, bringing one medical record from one doctor to a next. It all started with Westford. My mother tried to convince a bunch of doctors that a 5-year-old had a bunch of problems. Then she cherry-picked those medical records and brought them to Texas. But the doctors in Texas did not want any part of this craziness my mother had. So then she stuck me in New Mexico after the doctors started hearing from me. Then in New Mexico, my mother brought me to Maine, homeschooled me, but then she took all the information about New Mexico and started telling them how I had PTSD and anxiety from New Mexico. And yes, having a black guy choke me out did affect me. But what affected me more was what my mother was doing to me. And the doctors knew about this, but I wasn't allowed to talk about my mother that way. So because of that, the doctors heard very little about my mother and a lot about this black guy choking me out and other kids. Well, that caused a little bit of problems, but my mother was cherry picking medical records that she was making up with them too. She was calling behind my back when I was only like 8, 10 years old. No, 10 years old probably. 10, 11, 12. So she's setting up doctors. She's driving me 3 hours away from home. She's cherry picking her doctors. She's cherry picking what information she gives them. She's trying to give the doctors false information. They get some diagnoses. She's also slipping me pills from age 5 all the way to about 14. So I'm getting slipped pills, slipped pills, slipped pills, slipped pills, more pills, more pills. So obvious at times too, because I'm vomiting, getting sick right after she gives me these pills. She's purposely trying to make me sick, and it's very clear because she's open about it. She even tried to make me more sick as a punishment with Epicac. Oh, I'm giving you extra medication to make you extra sick. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said something I don't like, so I want you to take extra medication today. She made this very clear, and she even bragged about it openly. Then, many years later, she tried to hide it until I got her to admit to it again in front of a bunch of witnesses. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more druggings and crazy behaviors. You can't put a Munchausen syndrome by proxy type person in charge of a little orphan boy that has no parents. And my father just let her have her way with me like crazy. I'm not kidding. My father of 89, my mother, who's now dead, his wife, tortured me and destroyed my body. And I was so used to it too. I was so Stockholm syndrome. That's what I had, and that's what is the word I was looking for earlier. Stockholm syndrome. I thought it was normal to have a mother send a message to her grandson with a ruler across your face. I thought it was normal to get sick all of a sudden and have a Halloween curse in your family. I thought it was normal to have a mother give you weird ideas and fuck with your head, giving you false information. I thought it was normal to have a mother repeat lies about you, and then you tell her to please stop lying, and then she calls you a liar, and then you tell her to stop lying, and then she calls you a liar, and then that's it, right? And then the doctors don't write anything down, right? Like if my mother lies about me in front of the doctors and I ask her to stop lying about me, then nothing will come of it, right? No, of course, my mother will call the doctors and continue to try to cherry pick information to get what she wants. And that's dangerous. That could affect the rest of my life. That's not just something that ends at 18, that has permanent consequences. Medical is medical. That's not something that disappears at 18. It's not a criminal record like you stole a loaf of bread. If you lose your left leg and you're an amputee and you have a permanent disease, like let's say you have depression or bipolar, that's not something that disappears at 18. That's something that stays on your medical files for life. And if your mother went overboard with homicidal tendencies, suicidal tendencies, bipolar, depression, she pushed for schizophrenic behavior, she pushed for everything she could. Just in the book, she's just, okay, this one looks good, we'll try this one this week. And look at this one, we'll try this one. And then she's also slipping you drugs so you're passed out when you want to be awake, and you're awake when you want to be passed out, and you're vomiting when you want to be out with friends trick-or-treating, and you're feeling pale and weak, and you vomit in a toilet when you're supposed to be putting on a costume, and you don't know why. You haven't even gotten to get any candy yet. I mean, I'm probably the only kid in America that got sick from having zero candy on Halloween. And how did that happen? Well, you tell me. So I had a costume and I was getting ready to put it on. My mother tells me I am not allowed to go out trick-or-treating. She does not want me to be able to get a bin full of candy and go to strange houses. But I'm with all the neighbor kids and the other adults are present. So my father goes, no, 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 let him go. He's allowed to go. We already told him he can go. You can't change your mind now. You've already got him the costume. We already got him everything. His friends are out there. He has to be able to go. And then my mother goes, no, I don't want him to go out trick-or-treating. And then my father goes, well, he's allowed. That's kind of it. Then my mother goes, fine. And she storms off. And then my father goes, okay then. And then he goes into the kitchen. And then I go, okay, I'm going trick-or-treating, right? Yes. So then I go over to my costume and I put my right leg in and I put my left leg in. And I'm going, oh man, this costume is hard to put in. These stretchy fucking things are terrible. And I'm trying to put my legs in these stretchy fucking things. Then my mother goes, Zach, it's time to take your medicine. You got to take your medicine before you go out trick-or-treating. Okay, Mom. So then I put the costume on the floor in a big pile. And I run over to my mother. So I run over to my mother. And she says, okay, here's your medicine. I look at the hand. And there's a bunch of pills there. And one looks blue. And I don't remember blue, but I take it anyways. I remember one color being off. It could have been green. It could have been blue. I don't remember. But I remember it being a dark bluish green color or something. And one of them didn't look like my regular ones. But my mother knows best. And this is when I'm very, very young. I'm under 12 years old for sure, under 11. I'm very young. So I take my meds. My mother goes, here, take your meds. So I take my meds. And then I go to put my costume on. Now I'm in the room playing with toys because I'm a young kid. I'm not exactly good at concentrating. But I'm getting ready and I'm playing with my toys. And I finally get a pair of pants on. But I don't have the rest on quite yet. And I remember just having part of my costume on. I don't know if it was my pants. It might have been a stretchy shirt. Or it was something stretchy. I just remember it was something stretchy. But anyways, yeah, I'm hoping that I'm painting you a good enough picture here. Then I start getting an upset stomach. Now I have not eaten anything all day for candy or sweets. We're about to go out and I'm about to get the candy. And my mother locks all the candy up on top of her things and she locks it all up. It's all controlled by my mother. So we know there's no candy, but why am I getting upset stomach then? Oh, I just took my meds. Oh, that's right. So anyways, I go back to playing. But then I feel weak and pale, and I go in the bathroom, I look in the mirror, and all of a sudden I look ghost-like. I'm turning a very pale, even more than normal pale. I'm like, I can see my veins on the back of my hands, little lines in it. I'm white and with little lines, and I'm getting a little scared and shaky, and I feel really weak and shaky. You ever felt so weak, like you haven't eaten in a while, that your whole body feels shaky? That's what it felt like. And then I start dry heaving and vomiting in the toilet. I start getting sick. And then my mother, she kept on checking the doorway. Now on this doorway check, she goes, ah, you're sick, I knew it. Honey, Zach is sick, he cannot go out. So at the bathroom doorway, as I have my head over the toilet, my mother comes to the doorway, says, aha, I knew it. And then she just goes over and screams, or she says, uh-huh. I don't think she said she knew it. I think she goes, uh-huh. And then she turns and goes, honey, Zach can't go out trick-or-treating. He's sick. I get my way. She did not say the get my way part. She just said, honey, Zach is sick. He can't go out. But the get my way, obviously she just got her way, right? So then my father comes by, looks in the bathroom and goes, oh, yes he is. Zach, are you sick? Yeah, but I can go out. Nope. Ugh, no, I can't. I'm just like, I really want to go out, but I can't. And my father looks puzzled. What kid gets suddenly sick during Halloween? Every kid wants to go out trick-or-treating. This Zach is a weirdo. I bet he's faking on Halloween because he's some weird, crazy kid. That's what it is. Zach is weird and crazy. Oh, or who knows what's going on. But no, he really is looking pretty bad. He really is sick. What the hell's going on with this kid on Halloween? Oh well. Nope, Zach can't go out. He's sick. Now, what do you think happened in that interaction? Because that happened 3 times. 3 more Halloweens. So that happened 3 Halloweens. 3 Halloweens within a 4 or 5 year period, something like that. And there might have been more, like 4. That's just the amount that during my childhood that I know for sure. I know 3 of them for sure, but there's probably more. But you tell me what you think is going on where there's a curse. I called it the Halloween curse during childhood. But see if you can figure out what the Halloween curse is. If that happened 3 more Halloweens. My mother's not getting her way. Everybody says I'm allowed to go out. My mother says I'm not allowed to go out. They've overruled my mother. But my mother always has to get her way. She calls me over for meds. I take my meds. And then as soon as those meds kick in, I start getting violently sick in the bathroom. Then my mother tells my father I can't go out. So that happened 3 separate times in a short amount of time during my childhood. What do you think that is?